everybody. Thank you for having me. And I'm going to share a lot of stuff today. So, hopefully we can record all this so that you don't have to write it down. I'm Robert DeSantis, who cares. I'm president of transactional marketing and media for a company called Maddocks. Maddocks is, well, you saw it. We are a full-service branding, marketing, and advertising company located in Los Angeles. We represent a lot of different companies, from Red Bull, Sony, to the Warner Music, to Playboy, to a lot of different types of companies. And we've done a lot of different work for different companies. So I'm going to cover a lot of different things that I think might be interesting to you, that I wish somebody had shared with me when I was in your position. And being in your position is important, as I said earlier to some of the other people. One of the best commencement speeches to take advantage of is by Kurt Vonnegut, called "Wear Sunscreen." And there's two great commencement speeches I think that everybody should see, and one of them is that one, and the other one is Steve Jobs. Kurt Vonnegut, to me, the reason why I like it is because he starts out and he says, enjoy the power and beauty of your youth. And then he says, forget about it. You won't realize the power and beauty of your youth until they're long gone, faded away, and then you'll go back and look at pictures and say, oh my God. I had so much potential, type of thing. So that's one of the first things I want to share. The next thing I want to share is there a reason why I'm blinding light?
I asked them your hotel. Sorry.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It's kind of boring. One of my favorite marketing stories is two guys sitting on a park bench, and one guy's eating ice cream. And the other guy says, you know, I once wrote a book on how to lose weight eating ice cream and cookies. So the guy eating the ice cream says, wow, that's great. Does it work? And the other guy says, of course not. So the guy eating the ice cream says, well, I don't get it. What's the point? The other guy says, I sold 4 million copies. So I spoke some time ago at Pepperdine University about truth in advertising, and the creative world that marketing and advertising and branding offer to all of us is truly, truly unique and tantalizing, and will take everyone who wants to go down that road on a very exciting adventure. And I assume everyone in this room is interested in that field. If you're not, then, you know, this would really seem boring. The first thing I want to talk about is a little bit of history. So I have a methodology when I look at any new product and or service that comes in front of me, and that methodology is, number one, competitive landscape. I always look at what the competitive landscape looks like. This is one of the biggest, most important things people can do in developing a new product and or service, is look at what everybody else has done, so that you can determine what have they done right and what have they done wrong. And as I'm sure we're all familiar with, conducting a SWOT analysis, right? Everybody knows what a SWOT analysis is, and everybody knows add the extra T, right? What's the extra T? Okay, I guess it's important that I'm here. The extra T is for trend, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and trends. Trends are very important. Trends are everything, because if you are in a business where that trend is going away, then, for instance, if you had modeled your entire business in 2008 based on MySpace, where would you be today? Right? So trends are very important. They're like words. Words are the coding that we use, that we communicate to each other with. So when you have a product that doesn't resonate with the consumer, you're making it more difficult. You're doing what I call business prevention. You're making it hard for a consumer to embrace your product. Which leads me to Howard Moskowitz. Why is Howard Moskowitz important? Well, Howard Moskowitz was a psychophysicist, and you know, whatever that is. I think I dated a girl who was a psychophysicist. Still don't know. And he, in the early 70s, at Pepsi-Cola, this is pre-Dr. Drusillo, was introducing aspartame. And they wanted to know what the right amount of aspartame that they should use to create the perfect Pepsi. Right? As we all know, aspartame is not good for us. But that's a different class. And they knew that less than 8% was not going to be sweet enough, and more than 12% was going to be too sweet. So they wanted him to conduct this research, right? So for most of you, this is pretty easy. You know, you basically start creating batches of Pepsi, and you start, 8%, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and you gather whole groups of people to do a focus group, and you try it, and then you analyze the results. So Howard got all these results back, and they didn't make any sense. They didn't make any sense at all. So unlike a lot of people in marketing and research who would just say, hey, it's really hard to determine whether, to get definitive results as to what people really like in a cola, let's just pick 10%. But Howard wasn't like that. Howard went into, more, and Pepsi was his first client, and he finally concluded that you can't create the perfect Pepsi, you have to create the perfect Pepsi. And he said, what are you talking about? That makes no sense at all. Goodbye. Next. So they got rid of Howard, and then Howard went on, though. And he was contacted by Campbell's Soup. And Campbell's Soup had a product called Prego spaghetti sauce. And they were competing with Ragu. Ragu was #1. But Prego was a better sauce, and they knew it, but they didn't know how to communicate. And Ragu was the best, but it was a traditional sauce, which by traditional, it was created by the research team who went to Italy and said, we should make a spaghetti sauce that is like what the Italians eat in Italy, which kind of, you poured it on your spaghetti and it kind of was really kind of light. It just went to the bottom of the bowl. Whereas the Prego stayed at the top. It had better adherence. So Howard does this research and finds out that there are 3 different types of people who like different spaghetti sauce. 1 likes the traditional Italian version, very light. 2 likes spicy. And 3, the third most liked was chunky. So, goes back to the Prego people, and they go, wait a minute. Are you saying that 1/3 of the population who eats spaghetti love chunky spaghetti sauce, and nobody's selling chunky spaghetti sauce? He goes, yes. So they go, wow. So guess what they do? They start selling chunky spaghetti sauce. So you kind of wonder how these things happen, how when you go to the supermarket, what happened, what Howard actually created was the beginning of variety. And now, when we go to the supermarket, right, you see all of these varieties. You know, if you go into salad dressing, there's over 100 different varieties of salad dressing. Now, that variable change that's created in the marketplace is not necessarily good. So, what I'm doing today in front of you is sharing with you a little bit of history and kind of going to take you through this journey. And what has happened now is a lot of big companies, and at some point you are either going to work for a company that's selling products, or you're going to create your own products, or you're just going to take this information and forget it in 3 seconds after you walk out the door, which is about how long you remember things, is about 3 seconds, right? That's a whole other conversation. But that's about how long we have to communicate with people, right? So when we're trying to communicate a product, we only have 3 seconds to get it. So now we have enormous variety in all of these products. But the problem is it's not liberating, it's paralyzing. Right? So we have now figured out, for those of us who do this kind of research, which might be a little boring, but we find out that if we give you, the consumer, too many choices, you don't make any choice. Which leads us to a saying that I have, which is, people don't know what they want what they know. So when somebody comes to me and says, I want to do a new water, I have this new water. And I say, really? What's special about your water? Oh, it's this new, it's the perfect pH. You understand what pH is? I mean, it is critical that you get the proper pH balance in your water. Because if you don't, you become too acidic. Now, I, like many of you, would say, that's very interesting, that's fascinating. However, when we go out to the consumer, how are we going to communicate that? And by the way, who is the person, who is that person, and what are they drinking now that you're going to switch them from whatever they're drinking? So let's just say they're drinking Arrowhead. How are you going to convince them that Arrowhead is bad and you're good? Right? Because everyone in this room has a particular taste. There has never been a time in history where the saying one size fits all does not fit. We are all different, and we all have this individuality that we want to express. And if you want to see that, for sure, you can see it on Facebook, right? So now we're all on Facebook, and we're saying, look at me. This is me. This is who I am, what I have to say, where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm doing, when I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, why he did it, why she did it, why are we doing it. So we have all of that going on in this social network, which is what has really happened in our social network is our social network, for the most part, in one way has expanded. In another way, it has stayed the same. Because social networks have always existed. Social network has never really changed ever since man decided to sit around the campfire, right? And, you know, whether it was with a family or extended members of the family, that was a social network. That was a social network. Like right now, I mean, you talk to your grandparents, and they had a social network. They had, you know, they'll tell you stories, you know. Your Uncle John had Uncle Phil, and Uncle Bill, you know, don't say anything about him. And there's this thread that goes out. And now that thread is bigger with people that, a lot of people we don't really know. Which is the good news and the bad news. But the question is, and the challenge is for us, is where is it going and how is it going to change as we move forward, right? So, for instance, today we have 3 billion people playing video games of some sort, right? The gaming world is unbelievable, right? I'm sorry, not 3 billion, we have 3 billion hours a week. 3 billion, thank you. I knew you were laughing for a reason. That's a lot of people playing games. However, we're going to get there. But we have people playing 3 billion hours a week on the planet. We have 500 million people playing games. 500 million people playing games. As a matter of fact, now we have people in the gaming world who are defending their reason, right? The heavy, hardcore gamers are spending 14 hours a day. 14 hours a day playing World of Warcraft, right? How many gamers do we have in the room? Wow. Okay. So, I was expecting more. So, you know, everybody's looking for that epic win. Right? And now we have people who are actually saying, wait a minute, you know, how do we create a shift? Because now we've created a generation and we've created all these people who love games. How do we make this worthwhile? Right? How do we save the world? How do we make a better world through gaming? And some companies are actually creating games like A Day Without Oil or A Life Without Oil, so that you go through this game and you try to figure out alternatives and do it in a gaming fashion. And of course, companies are trying to figure out how do we infiltrate those games and say, buy this, buy that, right? How do we extend our brands to where the consumer is, right? How do we do that? And that's a challenge. And let's face it, for all of you who are gamers here, you don't want that kind of interruption. You don't want Coke in your face saying, drink Coke. I mean, you know, like you don't know Coke exists or something. There's an interesting movie called The Invention of Lying. Anybody seen The Invention of Lying? For those of you who haven't seen it, you should see it. It's a great premise. But in that movie, there's a commercial, and the guy comes on, and he says, "Hi everybody, I'm Bill. I'm with Coke," and there's just a bottle of Coke sitting on a podium, and he says, "We all know you know Coke, and we all know you drink Coke. We just want you to keep drinking it." And then in another scene, you see a bus ad, and it says Pepsi when they don't have Coke. Now, interestingly enough, this company, Coke, has created such an impact globally that it is the #1 consumed purchased beverage on the planet. Think about that for a second. The #1 consumed purchased beverage on the planet. That's before water and before milk. And when you consider that babies, kids, don't drink Coke, right? They drink milk. They should drink milk. And yet, more Coke is sold. So, it's a very interesting analysis when you look at the history of Coca-Cola and that brand and the impact globally of what a company can do with essentially this product that we all know is not good for us. But let's take another one that's even more obvious, like cigarettes. How many people smoke? No, it's not bad. I expected more. Cigarettes have survived and have really been the basis of a lot of the advertising that we experience today. The cigarette companies have been phenomenal and were probably the first to segment markets and determine how am I going to sell, how are we going to sell to women, how are we going to sell to men, how are we going to make this product aspirational, how are we going to sell it to teenagers, how are we going to continue to sell it to every particular market that we possibly can. And they've done a phenomenal job. And they actually created the trading card. That's how, you know, the baseball cards and the trading card business started. It actually started with the cigarette company. And they integrated it into film and television. One of my big pet peeves was in Avatar. I had several problems with Avatar. Can anybody help me out?
You can't smoke in space.
You can't smoke in space. And what happens from our co-star, the head scientist, what was her name? Sigourney Weaver. She gets out of the pod after supposedly being in there for years or whatever, and the first thing she says, "Where's my cigarette?" And I was like, I started to laugh in the movie theater, and everybody was like, "Oh." I wanted to get up and say, "Are you kidding me? We are in 2150. 2150. And she's saying, 'Where are my cigarettes?' And not only that, they give her a cigarette. So you mean to tell me that cigarettes they never even changed? We're going to go through this process. I mean, even now we're starting to see electric cigarettes. So I thought, you know, they're going to give her some kind of, you know, weird looking something that, but didn't happen. And I'm going, now for how many people have seen Thank You for Smoking? Everyone should see Thank You for Smoking. It's a great movie, and there's a scene in Thank You for Smoking where Aaron Eckhart, who works for the tobacco industry, meets up with Rob Lowe, who's this Hollywood agent, mogul type, and he says to Aaron Eckhart, he says, "What do you think about, you know, cigarettes in movies?" And there's a new movie coming out with Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones, and they're in space, and you could come out with cigarettes for space. And Aaron Eckhart says, "Well, how do they do that? You know, you can't smoke in space." And Rob Lowe says, "Oh, that's an easy fix. We just a couple lines in the dialogue, you know. It's a great thing that we invented and there we go." So when I saw Avatar, I said, "Oh my God, how did this happen?" Right? I thought it was, and here we're talking about allegedly the greatest environmental film of all time. So when I meet James Cameron, I'm going to have this discussion. I'm sure he's going to care, right? He's going to be like, who are you again? But, and there were some other problems in the film that I had, but I won't bore you with them at this time. But one of them was the end. I mean, didn't he see Iron Man? I mean, that's it? The guy's in a robotic suit? Anyway, so now we kind of look at products and the world of products and the world of advertising. And the bottom line for you and those of you who are going to get into marketing or advertising or some kind of a creative field are ultimately going to be challenged with how do we get consumers to buy our product? And the best way to realize that is to ask yourself truthfully, what makes me buy a product and why? And there's a lot of things that we know. For instance, a big part of it is aspirational, right? We do things because we see Jennifer Aniston drinking smart water. And we go, right? Hey, it's good enough for Jennifer Aniston. Girls think, gee, girls want her, I want to be her, I want to be like her, I'm going to drink smart water. Right? And that with obviously a probably $30 or $40 million a year advertising campaign. The aspirational part of things started quite some time ago with certain food, in the food category, with Grey Poupon. Does anybody here remember Grey Poupon commercials? There was a time when there was not much to mustard, right? And you got to think about this, okay? A lot of people say to me, Robert, you know, wow, that's great. You're in branding and advertising. You get all these, you know, new products. And a lot of that is true. But a lot of the time, you're dealing with something like mustard. And it's like, you know, quite frankly, you know, who gives a shit? It's not the most exciting thing in the world, right? But that's the challenge. And at the time, there were basically very few mustard companies, and mustard were basically turmeric and paprika, and Grey Poupon comes out with this French combination, a little bit of wine, a nose hit, and they said we're gonna make this like this, you know, it comes from France, it really came out of Oxnard, California. And then they create this commercial, this aspirational commercial, which is two guys, a guy pulls up in a Rolls Royce, and another guy pulls up in a Rolls Royce and says, "Do you have any Grey Poupon?" and all of a sudden, right, people were like, "Wow, you know, I got to get Grey Poupon." Because what happened? He created that aspirational point of view. You know, I suddenly want to experience Grey Poupon. It's good enough for these people. It's good enough for me. And we've done that in a lot of different categories. For instance, you know, a hero today is Howard Schultz with Starbucks, right? I mean, there's lots of different coffee out there. We can all make coffee at home. But yet we go to Starbucks. Starbucks is this lifestyle choice because irrespective of whether or not you make $5 million a week or $50 a week, If you go into Starbucks and there's this level playing field, we're all drinking Starbucks, right? And it somehow creates this equality. It's a lifestyle choice, and it's one that's an affordable lifestyle choice. So that becomes very important. And getting back to the world of branding, marketing, and advertising, Red Bull, for instance, Dietrich Mateschitz, that's his name, worked for a branding, marketing, and advertising company in Austria called Branded. And he was kind of burning out, right? He basically was at that point where he was saying, if I have to brand one more toothpaste, I'm going to jump out of a window and wash it. I'm going to jump out of a building and wash the windows on the way down. I mean, and then he ran into Red Bull. And as you may or may not know, was invented in Thailand. And he tried it. It was a different formulation than it is now. But he said, this is it. This is going to be it for me. And the interesting thing about that is that he had worked long enough that he was able to identify what is next. He was able to look at trends and say, I think this is it. I think that there's going to be an opportunity for an energy drink. Right? There were no energy drinks. He was the first. Now that's the good news and the bad news, right? That's the old, I'm going to sell shoes to kids in Africa. And one guy says, that's a stupid idea. Nobody wears shoes in Africa. And then the other guy says, are you kidding me? Nobody's got shoes. Right? So it just depends on how you look at it. Right? One, you can look at it as an opportunity, or you can look at it as a challenge. So Dietrich had this idea to do Red Bull, and it wasn't easy. Right out of the gate, he had 3 different advertising companies say, we have never had a product more likely to fail than this. And he said, why? And they said, because it tastes like shit. It tastes like cough syrup. We're drinking, everything out there is sweet and sugary. Let's not forget the Coke story. Right? So, Dietrich didn't care. Dietrich said, I think there is an opportunity here, and I'm going to go after it. Now, the advantage that Dietrich had was that he was an experienced branding, marketing, and advertising individual. That's the advantage that he had. So the first thing that he determined that was very, very critical, and that many, many marketers and companies make as a mistake, and that is they go and market to everybody. And we already know it's not a one-size-fits-all. Right? We already know we're very specific about our taste. So when people come into my office and I say, who do you think your demographic is? And they say, everybody. I say, you're going to have to leave. Because you can't market to everybody. Then I say, get more specific. Okay, baby boomers. You're going to have to leave. I say, let's start with a gender. Pick a gender. Male or female. Right? You have to get specific about who you're going to market your product to. And Dietrich was. He knew what his customer, he knew the customer that he was going after, which was, at the time, one of the top-selling soft drinks in the marketplace, which was not Coke, not Pepsi, what was it? Somebody just said it? Mountain Dew. Right? Remember? Do the do. So, Dietrich said, I'm going after the guys who drink Mountain Dew, but I'm not just going after anybody who drinks Mountain Dew. I'm going after young, extreme sports guys that have an aspirational quality to them. Right? So he went after them and he said, drink this, give you energy, good energy, lots of B12 and toddy, whatever that is. We still don't know, right? No one to this day knows, can tell me what taurine does, right? And we don't care. People being, oh, hey, good, you're kidding, why are you drinking? Oh, it's great, it's got taurine. So he went after that audience, and that audience received it. Now, there's a saying that I have that you may or may not remember, but I'm going to share it with you, and it's basically, it's not important who likes you, it's not important who hates you, it's only important who loves you. I know a lot of the girls will use that in a relationship. I don't care if you hate me, I don't care if you like me, I only care if you love me. Valentine's Day is approaching. Just show me your love. And that's what it's all about. It's all about love. Why? Because if we don't love it, then we like it. And if we like it, then it's kind of like everything else, right? It's, right, for like the guys in the room, and I'm one of them, you know, when a girl says, can I like you? You know, it's like, oh, God. Okay, time for me to go. But when you get into that love category, then all of a sudden, it's kind of like a movie, right? It's like Drive. How many people have seen Drive? Not as many as I thought. Okay, well, Drive is one of those movies that you'll either love or you will hate. There is no I like it. For instance, my partner at Maddocks, who's a little older and has entirely different tastes than I do. And I told him, I said, you will hate the movie. Interestingly enough, because I said to him, you will hate the movie, he went to see the movie. And he came back into the office the next day, and guess what he said? I hated that movie. Are you kidding me? These pregnant pauses, and it just dragged on. And I know, I told you to hate the movie. And I knew you'd hate the movie. But what happened? He responded to the fact that I hate that I loved it and told him that he would hate it, so he wanted to find out. Now that's very important. That's a very, very, very important in the world of marketing and advertising, because emotions are what drive us, right? So sometimes it's almost as important to have somebody hate something as it is to love it. For instance, Howard Stern, right? Some people love him, some people hate him. But what happens? They talk about him, they all listen to him, and some people listen to him when they ask him, why do you listen to him? I hate him. They listen the longest. They listen the longest because they hate him, right? And some people love him. So the key is that when we look at products, for instance, getting back to movies, when you go see a movie and you love it, what happens? You tell everybody, right? You have to see this movie. It's fantastic, right? MI4, I don't know. I mean, whatever it is, Sherlock Holmes, whatever it is. I see everything. I listen to everything. I am very, very, very specific about what I like and what I don't like. Okay? So I don't care. I listen to all kinds of music. On the way over here, we were talking about the radio, and David asked me about what do you think about advertising on the radio, and I said, well, it's certainly great for certain demographics and certain audiences. Well, do you think it's going to change with where communication is going, where radio is going, sirens and iPods? And I said, no, it's not. And it's one of the only ways that terrestrial radio is the only way that you're going to get new music, right? So I listen to all kinds of music, and that's where I get it. How else would I know if Casey Ellison is coming out with a new song? Or, you know, how else do you hear, for instance, when Lady Gaga came up with Me and You, I mean, the first time I heard it on the radio, I was like, wow, who is this? Is this Kelly Clarkson? Right, because it's a country and western kind of thing. Well, I wouldn't know that if I wasn't listening to terrestrial radio. So, the point is that when you love something, you share it, you communicate it. And as marketers, we have to get people to love something. And if they don't love it, so if you're going to work for a company, if you're going to be doing something for yourself, remember that. Remember that, as a matter of fact, everything that you are doing today is aspirational, because in some way you love it, right? You don't go into your closet and say, what's going to make me look like shit today? Doesn't happen, right? What you do is you say, what do I feel like wearing? What's going to make me look good today? And everything in your closet. And as you know, you wear 20% of what's in your closet, right? Especially the girls. The guys only own 20%. They have a limited wardrobe selection. But for girls, you've got 100 pairs of shoes, and a lot of them were impulse buys where, gee, that was on sale. It was $200 and now it's only $49. I gotta buy it, but wore it once and no, nobody talked about it. So I'm not wearing that. So I want to end with, if you have any questions, if you want to talk to me, we can do that. I'm more than happy to do that. I've given myself a lot of time. Actually, I thought we were ending at 4:20.
Yeah, a couple students have to get to class.
Oh, okay.
And so we have just a few things we kind of want to wrap up. But,
Okay.
you know, you can stay and if they have questions and they don't have to rush, but we'll have to get to class so that.
Well, cool. Very cool. Okay. So you want to wrap up now?
Sure.
The other thing that I'll end with is naming. Naming. Very important to communicate the right message. Story of Farmer John and his 3 daughters and 3 boys that wanted to date the daughter. And the daughter said, you know, my father, he's an old-time farmer, and you better come up with something really creative to let him into the house. So the first guy says, wow, okay. So he goes to the door and knocks on the door and says, hi, I'm Joe. I'm here for Flo. We're going to go to the show. Can't you go? Farmer John, you know, looks at the guy and says, well, that's pretty creative. Okay, come on in. So the second guy is thinking to himself, he says, wow, what am I going to do? Okay, he knocks on the door, and Farmer John opens the door, and he says, "Hi, I'm Freddie. I'm here for Betty. We're gonna have spaghetti. Is she ready?" Farmer John says, "Wow, okay, that's very, very impressive." And the third guy, he's just not doing very well at all, and he knocks at the door, and Farmer John opens the door, and he says, "Hi, I'm Chuck." Boom! Thank you very much.